If the sun decided to stop producing light, then the animals in the wild would be the first to notice. Most animals need daytime to roam from place to place, especially in the large savannas in Africa. Zebras, wildebeests, and giraffes all need the day to move to avoid predators. As soon as the sun goes down, it's their bedtime. If the sun suddenly went dark, animals wouldn't comprehend what was going on and would simply become an early lunch for predators. Nocturnal creatures would be equally confused at the time change. Birds usually flock during the day, so we wouldn't hear or see any of them. We have them to thank for eating pests in the sky. Well, them and bats. But if you're in an area with no bats, then consider the insects to be the winners here. Temperatures would start to drop gradually. Humans would notice the effects as well. We're used to having the sun shining at the peak of noon, but with the sunshine's disappearance, we would be living in total darkness. It'd just be a matter of survival. If the sun suddenly got dark, then we'd only have around 8 minutes to enjoy the rest of it. That's because it takes that much time for sunlight to travel thousands of miles across the solar system. We would have to use UV lights to grow some crops, but it wouldn't be enough to feed the whole world, not to mention the dropping temperatures across the world. Survival would be difficult in the open plain. Everyone would have to duck inside shelters and warm bunkers. Plants need photosynthesis to grow. Without it, we wouldn't have any crops. Bread wouldn't exist, since it needs wheat. Even the algae in the oceans need photosynthesis to survive, which is the highest source of oxygen rather than forests. This means oxygen levels would start to deplete. Large bodies of water like lakes, oceans, and seas would also start to lack oxygen to sustain marine life. One of our main sources of vitamin D is the sun. There are other ways of getting it, but the sun is the best and most convenient way. Without crops or vegetation, all the herbivores would have to rummage for the last green grass on land or a leaf hanging from a tree. They would soon run out of food, which would also be bad news for us humans, since we need animals like cows, horses, and sheep for our livelihoods. This wouldn't happen overnight. Of course, the oceans would remain warm for some time, but eventually, they would get cold and freeze. Earth is still a planet powered by an iron core that produces so much heat. This would not be enough to keep the planet warm. Our next step would be finding the right shelter and keeping warm. If this happened overnight, then chances are there wouldn't be any ready-made bunkers for a scenario like this, unless you're watching this video and decide to build one after. They would have to provide heat 24/7 and be capable of growing crops under UV light. Solar-powered facilities would be a thing of the past. People would have to wear sustainable suits when venturing out into the open. Since it would be so dark, we would need strong lights or powerful night vision goggles to see anything. The lands would be desolate. Nocturnal creatures that can handle freezing temperatures would take it over. Structures would collapse, since there would be oxygen depletion. Concrete needs oxygen to remain intact. The bunkers themselves would have limited oxygen as well. We would need to uproot many trees and place them under strong UV lights for them to produce oxygen. In turn, it would produce its ecosystem in the large underground bunkers. The oceans on the surface would freeze over eventually. Gathering any natural resources from the ocean floor, like gas or oil, would be impossible. The large object, which used to be a bright and sunny star, would still be floating around. But what would happen if the sun disappeared overnight? Well, pretty much the same thing, except way worse. The sun is the largest celestial object in our solar system, which keeps all of our planets lined up the way they are. They orbit around the sun, minding their own business. Without such a large object keeping them steady, the planets would start to float around randomly. Some might even collide with each other. In other cases, the planets would just float around and fly off into space eventually, until they found a new star to orbit around. Earth might or might not be one of those planets. Our planet would still be dark. We would be flying through space at an unusual speed. The planet wouldn't rotate on itself, and many objects would crash into us. We'd be in the trajectory line of mass comets waiting to strike us down. The threat of the cold wouldn't be a major factor anymore. It would be what's beyond us. This means we'd have to dig our bunkers deeper. We wouldn't have an atmosphere anymore to trap any form of heat or anything. We would be floating for an eternity. But let's go back to that scenario where the sun just decided to go dark. Don't worry, our planet would still be orbiting the sun along with the other planets. The temperatures would keep plummeting until nothing could survive on the surface. It would be total darkness 24/7. Only bacteria and possibly tardigrades could survive on the surface. Tardigrades are microscopic critters that can survive just about anything, including outer space. Eventually, oxygen would be absent from the Earth's surface, and there wouldn't be anything up there anymore, except for them. Since they would be the dominant and possibly the only creatures on the surface, they'd manage to evolve into bigger species and produce many more. Hundreds of thousands of years into the future, humans would have had to evolve to the conditions underground. Our eyes would be much bigger to take up as much light as possible. Our skin would become whiter since there would be no sun underground. Our hearing would also be much more sensitive since the underground would create echoing sounds. We'd still have the intellect we do now, but our bodies would be ready for the surface. The main threat would be the giant tardigrades sluggishly dragging themselves around. Under a microscope, they look kind of cute, but imagine them the size of a polar bear. Still want something like this in your backyard? They can live anywhere, so they'd infiltrate the bunkers now and then. They'd get ferocious and come in different sizes and shapes. At this point, humans would not be the dominant species, since they'd have to hide underground. Some tardigrades from different tribes wouldn't be friendly with each other. Major cities that used to be bustling with people would be home to giant water bears. Tardigrades are known as water bears since they kind of look like little bears, but these beasts with 8 legs would be much bigger than them. Bears and most animals would have been wiped out on the surface. Under the ice, some deep-sea creatures would thrive and have moved closer to the surface. These animals were used to living in darkness away from the sun, but over thousands of years of dominating the waters, they'd have grown to enormous sizes. Some of these creatures would adapt to crawling out of the mainland. Even though the surface would be frozen, they'd still find ways to crack through the ice and make their way. Humans, meanwhile, would create large underground channels and networks, building cities and colonies. We'd dominate the tunnels where our hands and feet would grow to become web-like and large. We'd take over everything underground and remain the smartest species on Earth. We'd manage to keep old art pieces from the surface and important records to stay as human as possible. We'd keep on surviving no matter what.
What happens when a star runs out of its fuel? First of all, paradoxically, it grows to 1,000,000 times its original size. You see, when the core of a star runs out of hydrogen, it starts contracting under the weight of its own gravity. But some hydrogen fusion continues in the upper layers. While the core contracts, it heats up. This causes the upper layers of the star to heat up too and expand. The radius of the star increases. As the star grows, it engulfs any matter, even its own planets, in its wake. Astronomers have watched stars right before or straight after swallowing entire planets, but until recently, they have never seen the process itself. Scientists from different universities have reported that for the first time in history, they've observed a star swallowing a planet. And this tragic event happened not somewhere in a faraway galaxy, but in our own Milky Way, some 12,000 light-years away from us. Astronomers spotted an outburst from a star, which is around 0.8 to 1.5 times the mass of our Sun, near the eagle-like constellation, Aquila. It became over 100 times brighter than usual in a mere 10 days, and after that, it quickly faded away. Even more interesting, this white-hot flash was followed by a longer-lasting signal that was also colder than the first flash. And this combination, my friend, could only mean one thing. The star engulfed a nearby planet. What planet was it? Astronomers believe it could be a boiling hot world from 1 to 10 times the mass of Jupiter. Such planets are also called hot Jupiters. They're giant exoplanets similar to the Jupiter we have in our solar system that need less than 10 days to orbit their stars. The planet we're talking about had been gradually spiraling toward the star until it was pulled into its atmosphere and, eventually, into the core of the perishing star. This galactic feast happened between 10,000 and 15,000 years ago when the star was about 10 billion years old. And given its respectable age, the swallow itself happened lightning fast, in one fell swoop. This is very different from other hot Jupiters, which were quite delicately nibbled by their stars. Astronomers aren't sure if there are any other planets orbiting this star, perhaps at a safer distance, but even if there are, thousands of years will probably pass before they become the star's main course or dessert. In any case, now that astronomers know what they should search for, they're going to be on the lookout for more cosmic gulps. Because one day, our planet, as well as part of our solar system, will suffer the same fate. Everything around us will be gone in a flash. But you may relax and breathe out. It won't happen for another 5 billion years. That's when the sun is supposed to burn out and expand so much that it will swallow the inner planets of the solar system: Mercury, Venus, Earth, and Mars. If people manage to colonize some other world by that time, which should be at least 10,000 light years away from Earth, they would be able to observe this catastrophe. The sun would suddenly become much, much brighter, and it would eject some material into space. It would swallow several planets, including Earth, before nonchalantly setting back to what it was. But stars are not the only things in the universe that swallow other space objects. There's another kind of cosmic monsters that munch on everything, even light. Have you guessed? Right. I'm talking about ruthless black holes. But what is more interesting, they not only devour stuff but also seem to spit it out. Not so long ago, scientists found out that the supermassive black hole at the center of our home Milky Way galaxy seems to be leaking. Why is it a game changer? Because it might mean that this black hole, called Sagittarius A*, whose mass is 4.1 million times the mass of our Sun, isn't a sleeping giant as previously thought. It might still be active, and this leakage may be the whole hiccuping while swallowing clouds of gas. During the research, the team of astronomers used the Hubble Space Telescope. It helped them spot a jet that looked like a blowtorch. It was pushing into clouds of hydrogen at the center of our galaxy. The jet seemed to spew gas like a hose directed into a pile of sand. This often happens around active black holes, surrounded by the material, pulled toward them by their immense gravitational pull. Some of this material gets into the black hole, but a small part of it gets swept outward by powerful magnetic fields. The research suggests that when a giant gas cloud gets too close to our supermassive black hole, it gets swallowed, and then the hole belches mini jets of matter. Fermi bubbles might be the result of the belches that happened around 2 to 4 million years ago. But recently, scientists have discovered another giant glowing bubble of hot gas. It aligned with the jet stretching for 35 light years or more from the supermassive black hole. Astronomers suspect that the jet could have plowed into this bubble of gas and inflated it. Now I'll tell you something even creepier. There seem to be black holes that might be eating each other. Well, kind of. They're actually trying to share their meal at the moment, but who knows what will happen in the near future. But let me go into detail. Astronomers have spotted 2 supermassive black holes, feasting on the cosmic material of 2 merging galaxies in distant space. These giants have been located with the help of the Atacama Large Millimeter Submillimeter Array of Telescopes, also known as ALMA. These telescopes are in northern Chile's Atacama Desert. Scientists originally used them to watch 2 merging galaxies located about 500 million light-years away from Earth. Astronomers have also noticed that 2 gigantic black holes were growing alongside each other not far from the center of the coalescing galaxy, UGC 4211. Apparently, these black holes came across each other when their host galaxies collided. One of the black holes is around 200 million times the mass of our Sun, and the other is a bit smaller, about 125 million times the mass of our star. Even though they aren't visible directly, the black holes are surrounded by bright clusters of warm, glowing gas and stars. All of this has been tugged close by the black hole's gravitational pull. Times will pass, and these black holes will start circling each other. And eventually they will collide, creating one, probably even bigger black hole. Scientists have been observing these black holes across multiple wavelengths of light and have come to the conclusion that they are kinda unique. They're located the closest to each other astronomers have ever seen. The distance between them is a mere 750 light-years, which astronomically speaking, is just next door. Even more exciting, this distance is close to the limit of what modern technologies can detect. Interestingly, such ginormous merges are more typical for distant galaxies. This makes it harder for Earth-based telescopes to see them. But the sensitivity of ALMA helped astronomers observe those bright and compact regions where matter swirls around black holes. Imagine how surprised astronomers were when instead of one black hole, they saw two of them, munching on the dust and gas stirred up by the massive space merger. The most important thing about this discovery is that it may mean that such black hole binaries are likely to be much more common than we previously thought. And if pairs of black holes are so common, it might make it easier for us to study gravitational waves that occur when black holes collide. Such waves are also known as ripples in spacetime. If we talk about the recently discovered pair of black holes, it might still take them several 100 million years to crash into each other. But by observing their behavior, scientists can figure out how many binary black holes that are about to collide exist in the universe.
What would the Earth look like if it was born in another solar system? I did a little research for you to find out, and the results were surprisingly wholesome. There are some warm tropics, strong winds, and giant dragonflies. But okay, let me explain from the very beginning. Since 1995, NASA has discovered more than 4,100 planets outside the solar system. Unfortunately, most of them are either flying ice balls like Neptune or gas giants like Jupiter. But there are still as many as 161 planets similar to our Earth. And one of them is very close to us, in the Alpha Centauri constellation. There are 3 stars in this constellation. 2 of them are called Alpha Centauri A and Alpha Centauri B. If you live in the southern hemisphere, you've probably seen them. They're very bright. Because of that, they look like one big star. They rotate around each other very slowly. And there's the 3rd star, chilling around not far from them. It's a teeny tiny red dwarf, Proxima Centauri. It got its name because of its proximity to our Sun. This star is the most interesting one, so let's talk more about it. Proxima Centauri is only 4.5 light-years away from us. Oh, and 1 light-year is about 6 trillion miles. Yep. If we went there, it would have taken just a little over 165,000 years of traveling in a space shuttle. Oh, you think that's a lot? For the universe, it's like checking on your fridge. Proxima Centauri is much lighter and much smaller than the Sun. It's also 2 times colder than the Sun, with a temperature of 3,000 Kelvin. That's why we can't see it without a telescope. On the bright side though, it will burn for trillions of years, and you don't have to worry that one day it will eat us like our Sun. And yes, our twin planet is located right next to Proxima Centauri. This planet is called Proxima b. Yeah, I know, they got creative with all these names. I hope you won't get confused. It's slightly larger and more massive than the Earth. This planet is located in the habitable zone of Proxima Centauri. It means that there can be water and even some microorganisms there. Yes, it's possible that one day we'll find some life there. But right now, we don't know much about this mysterious planet. It's probably a rocky planet like our Earth and has a similar landscape, but this is just a theory. Who knows what kind of jokes the universe can throw at us? It would be a shame to fly 165,000 years just to stumble upon a giant piece of ice or something. Fortunately, we probably don't have to wait that long. The big brains are now developing a technology that would allow us to move at the speed close to the speed of light. If they succeed, we'll get to Proxima b in just 20 years. But anyway, this video is not just about Proxima b. It's about what would have happened if life had originated not in our solar system, but in Alpha Centauri. What if we were orbiting Proxima Centauri, or the other 2 stars? So now, let's imagine that the Earth has replaced Proxima b. I'm going to call this new planet New Earth. Guess I'm not very creative at naming either. First of all, the orbit. The new Earth must be about 25 times closer to its star than Proxima b is. Otherwise, it would be unimaginably cold. Let's move the planet a little closer. Excellent. The day still lasts 24 hours, but our orbital period is very high. Proxima b revolves around its star in 11 days. But we'll make it in just 8. Hey, a birthday party every week? Sign me up. Oh, hold on. There's another problem. You see, Proxima Centauri is a flare star. This means that sometimes, just out of nowhere, it throws out some stellar winds. These winds carry around a bunch of ionized particles, which then settle on the planets. Yeah, our Sun also does that, but Proxima Centauri tries to finish us off 2,000 times harder than our Sun, so the radiation levels are off the scale, to say the least. Don't worry, it's fine. All we need are incredibly strong magnetic fields. They will help us create a very thick atmosphere that can protect us from the Proxima Centauri's tantrums. So now it's going to be very warm, or not. Another problem. Scientists are still not sure how exactly Proxima Centauri's planets rotate around it. What if they turn out to be tidally locked, like our moon? Then one half of the new Earth will be a frying pan, and the other half will be some frosty deserts. Oh, it's fine, we'll just settle down somewhere in the middle. Didn't expect that I would ever say this, but it will definitely be warm at the North Pole. And if we're lucky with the rotation, we'll just get a cozy, warm planet. The average temperature is about 70 degrees Fahrenheit, and there aren't any extreme temperatures. On the new Earth, we have much more water. The weather is generally pretty crazy, some very strong winds and quite destructive rains that can go on for quite a long time, but you can adapt. Temperature changes are much more noticeable in the mountains. Just like on Earth, the higher you climb, the colder it gets, except it's very cold right here at the top. Because of this, the mountains and hills have jungles below and snow-covered deserts on the tops. But in general, it's almost like the Earth's tropics. The flora is very rich, the trees are very low but lush. The thick atmosphere also makes flying easier, so there are a lot of large flying animals, like dragonflies with a wingspan of 16 feet. Moving on. The sky here is much lighter than that on Earth and very cloudy. Sometimes it may seem completely white. But the starry night is beautiful and bright. There are 4 suns. Our main one is Proxima Centauri. We can also see 2 bright Alpha Centauri stars. And finally, our old sun, which looks like a bright, distant star. I'll allow you to shed a tear for the old Earth. There's a few planets near us, like Proxima Centauri c. The host star is surrounded by 2 belts of cosmic dust, so get ready for some gorgeous, colorful night views. So what we have in the end is a little crazy, but a beautiful green planet. I personally wouldn't mind moving there already. What about you? Write in the comments. Alright, so now we know what would have happened if our Earth had been born near Proxima Centauri. What about the other 2 stars? Unfortunately, we won't be able to rotate near 2 stars at the same time. Scientists suspect that Alpha Centauri A and B have some kind of common planet that jumps from one orbit to another, but it's probably very cold. Let's choose Alpha Centauri A. Just like on the new Earth, here our average temperatures are about 70 degrees Fahrenheit, but now the temperature variation is quite large. It goes from negative 100 degrees Fahrenheit at the South Pole to 113 degrees Fahrenheit at the equator. We'll be fine close to the north. The day is still 24 hours, and the orbital period is 1 year and 1 month. It's almost the same for the Alpha Centauri b, but the orbital period is about half a year. Other conditions are very similar to those on Earth. Changes in the seasons are almost not noticeable. The temperatures don't change much either. No matter where we settle down, the neighboring star will be clearly visible, but we probably won't see Proxima Centauri. And that's about it. Of course, all this assumes perfect conditions. Just like on Earth, one slightest change, whether it's a thin atmosphere or a bigger distance from the star, and it won't end well. We got really lucky with our Earth. But even so, the chances of finding a habitable planet are very high. Even with the tiniest possibility, there will be about 15 million planets in our universe that we can find life on.